So just going to start. No, Marianne, I'm also going to make you co-host so that if anybody else comes, you can let them in. Okay. So yeah, welcome. And today, some of you already know, so today we're in the Blue Hand wave spell. We just came into that. So it's a really good time for anchoring knowledge and coming into a deeper state of knowing, but also a kind of interactive interlocution with the universe around us. And yeah, I know a lot of us are in the cosmic soup right now. And yeah, it's quite hard to speak really. So I don't know how well I'm going to speak today. But I really wanted to share with you something that came in recently. It's not like we didn't see it coming, but it's come in and it wants to take center stage in terms of any sort of public offerings we have. And it's it's connected a little bit to the book I wrote, which I published around a year ago, but it's also connected to something that we're all plugged into. And I think that I received some prompts in that sacred mirroring that we have with people, where, sometimes you're talking and everybody says something a certain way one day, and you're like, I'm supposed to pay attention. And what was happening was that when I was in Mallorca a couple of weeks ago, everybody I was speaking to was involved in kind of like community projects or visionary projects, and they were starting to run into trouble. Okay. And they were starting to actually ask me for advice, which was interesting because that was not the case before. And this was happening in all these different situations and different places. And really, a lot of this was another reason why I wrote the book last year, but something that I think that many of us feel strongly about is that we are on the precipice of something really big, really telepathic. We have the option to step into a higher timeline, but we're surrounded by a lot of stuff that's kind of wonky. And I think that I'm very grateful to having studied with Khentrul Rinpoche, Halachakra Master, for 5 years, and also synthesizing what teachers and elders had taught me from indigenous tribes, and knowing that there is a set of cosmic and natural law principles that often doesn't seem to get translated into eco-villages or cryptocurrency or any of these kind of futuristic Elon Musk type ways of envisaging the world. And and I'm at the point of being a little bit perturbed to the point of action because I think that we have this possibility to change timelines very soon, to jump into something. But what I see is a lot of work that hasn't tempered the ego, that hasn't even thought about the trappings of the ego or the manipulations of the unconscious and how it can guide our behavior. And and this cult of the I and this vertically organized society framework that is ripe to be shifted. But what's happening is that out there, a lot of frameworks are still very much about I'm the top, I'm the height at the height of this, and you are lesser. And of course, we need to have authority when I don't want to go for brain surgery or something to a butcher. And we have to have roles in society where our seniority takes place and is given its rightful place. But yeah, we're in a funny time. And so this was what really catalyzed that it was time to start to do something that could actually be a form of sacred activism, which would be for some of us to actually come in to co-inquiry, to sharing, to panel discussions, to dreaming pods, and to actually embrace the fact that we are multidimensional, interdimensional, interrealm, multidimensional, multidirectional being. Because we're coming out of the paradigm where everything is around the vertically operated human. And even the fact that we spend, usually like 8 or 9 hours maybe lying down every day, the horizontal human hasn't really ever got much of a look in. And in terms of the way natural law works, permaculture works, everything is not just about vertically operating society. And so if we don't start to witness the difference and be the difference and discuss it and become it, who's going to be helping to create a new timeline? Because it's just going to be the Elon Musks of this world and all of this elite-based programming that is just going to have a futuristic flavor, but isn't actually going to do anything. Okay. So this is what stemmed this concept of authentic new earth weavers, which happens to have the acronym of ANEW. And ANEWing, and when something is anew, it is it's revised upon what exists before. It's got a fresh new life to it. It's not just fresh and new. It's something that has come into a higher state of being. And this is the call to action is for co-creators, weavers, people who would like to offer things, as long as they don't take up loads of our time doing it. If they can come into the frequency, we can help to create opportunities for people, but it has to be reciprocal. Okay, so today we wanted to launch the concept of ANEW, and I'm going to tell you a little bit that I'll bring to the table. And the one thing I want to say is that this is not just this is not Padma's thing. This is very much a call to action where I'm bringing something to the table because I have written a book, but it's really to start to even disrupt the energetics of that vertical delivery from day one. Okay, so I'd like to hand over. I've got a little presentation, but I hope it's short and sweet. I'd like to hand over to each of you to say hello or anything that's coming through for you right now. If anybody's actually able to speak today, so I'm finding it hard.
I'm surprised I can form a sentence, so I'm very delighted that you're able to form a string of sentences together. It's quite impressive.
It's that sort of time right now.
But just what came was just said that there in the chat there of just like I was feeling into it, and when you were saying that about the horizontal as well, there's a gene key, of course. I'm just been recently free of my studies and into the real world now. With gene keys, and it was the gene key 45, which is a synarchy. And
Yes.
it just feels very resonant for that, that it's been the way that I feel as well. Myself have been trying to get to, but it's kind of almost like you're saying, it's kind of like it's almost like we're operating in a different timeline. And yet that timeline is absolutely in existence in nature all the time. So it just feels like it's coming into that frequency of what is natural and what you were saying as well about the dreaming and the dream time as well. Like I'm very grateful for, the elders, the teachers, a meditation teacher I have as well, that have always put that as a very, very important aspect of life and of working with our unconscious, but also how we can really weed through that and then come into right decisions. And that just really feels like that has also been hijacked, so to speak, with like Wi-Fi at night and phones, first thing at night, last thing at night, first thing in the morning. It kind of is just everywhere we kind of are at those connection points, those really liminal connection points. There also seems to be this other energy that I'll just call it for now. I have other names for it that like to just get in there. And there's also as well something like I was saying about the I cult. It's almost like anything that's shared, even, from wisdom keepers or online, that it's consumed as knowledge. And I want to take that in rather than actually just listening, absorbing, being with, and knowing that everything has its own natural timing when that comes in. And it's something that I'm having to apply myself at the moment as I learn my remember maybe my mother tongue as well, and I can't do it from here. That it has to be a receptivity and just little words then drop in and then they're with me. And I can build it little by little. It takes time, it takes patience, and there's a lot that's having to drop and shed away as well with the shame around it and things like that. But it's this moving away from the fast pace and this always moving towards the future, whereas the future is actually here now. So yeah, thank you. I really want to hear more from yourself and everyone in here on how that horizontal weaving can really happen from that place of the dreaming.
Yeah, it's we started doing some little baby dreaming pods earlier this year. And this had been coming through even when I was writing the book. It felt like then there it felt like this year's important. We knew the astrology. And then it was about how do we start to create these webs, these nets. And we've done a few little dreaming pods earlier this year. And what's amazing is that some of us who are normally maybe talking because we may have that authority for that particular part of the information, we're just there. And lots of students are sharing these amazing insights. And people are opening up multidimensionally. And also, we go into non conceptual space. And this is this reclamation of the grandmother's codes, the dream time. And I write about this in the earlier parts of the book, but everything comes from the non conceptual first, always. That's the law. You come from non conceptual and then form manifests. And so we got all these people who are master manifestors who are thinking what they want to manifest, which is the totally wrong code. And that's why some of us need to be the agents of change by just actually slowing down and going into these synarchic group fields. And yes, sometimes and then seeing what comes out of it. So then having co-inquiry, and we're going to also work with different modules, different ways. So sometimes we'll do the dreaming first, sometimes there'll be a bit of a scene setting and then a co-inquiry. And we're going to play with that so that everybody can then take these models out to their communities or tweak them. Because actually, it feels, and I don't want to get dualistic about this, but it feels like this concept of the new earth is very much pivoted around personalities and these sorts of things and social stuff and that will be important, but we have to go into these realms first. And of course not everybody is of that design or desire to do that, but this is actually in these months, because of the way the timelines are coming, it's almost like this slowing down is affording us the privilege of being able to come into these pods together and also then to create these offshoot groups where somebody, I'm not trained in human design, but I want to hear more where we can start to share our tools. But we need to start to create. It was almost like the grandmothers came forth even like 6 months ago, and we're saying in their way, you have to do the dreaming before the doing, and who's going to do it if the dreamers don't do it? And this is our time. And actually today, the traditional Mayan calendar, it's number 9, which is all about the divine feminine, and it's Akabal, which is about those liminal spaces. So that's what I would like to talk about in a little minute. But I'd like to see if anybody else has anything they'd like to share before I go into my new experience with a new software that's a bit crap. I'm sorry, I can't speak very well today. We some of us just did a dream spell class, and I think a lot of us are more comfortable being etheric right now. Yeah. So why don't we just sit and hold space for a little minute, unless anybody would like to speak verbally? Okay, let's just have a little quick transmission to let's just be the change by just doing this and owning it. And I just really invite us all to connect from the heart, but also from our higher energetic centers. Understanding that every place we have mindfully given offerings is also connected to us in the grid, that we are connected to each other in the grid. And that just by even having an aspiration for an authentic entry into the new earth, with no idea of how that looks except for emanating love and compassion and optimum positive vibes, that's all we have to do. And that the better that we weave this thread together in an altruistic, benevolent way, the higher the outcome that can actually be. Knowing that there are other like-minded people around the world who are also feeling this, intuiting this, their gnosis is telling them this, who are also possibly forming their own little guilds and ecosystems. And knowing that somehow, as the fabric of the new earth, we're actually being asked to start to weave, to fortify this grid, this fiber optic, the cosmic superhighway. And actually, in one of our dreaming pod sessions quite early on, one participant really saw like these little pillars lighting up and almost all these spiders' webs joining together all around the earth grid. This is where we can connect to the new sphere, the planetary consciousness. And as we remember, we are connected and we have our consciousness and our communication as sacred gifts, as spiritual beings having a human experience. Let our sacred activists know that they are needed at this time as this multidirectional inter-realm being. And this is a very fast way of working because our consciousness knows no bounds if we work with it appropriately. And something in these coming times that we can really enjoy is that actually sometimes we are just being allowed to take a breather from the craziness and just surrender to being a transmitter and receiver of cosmic consciousness, working as a group field, and also understanding the nuances that we bring to our multidimensional and human and ecosystemic roles. Just let you all stay in the field a little longer while I get on this little presentation. Hey, and you just receive and be with this. Hopefully it's quite short. And I apologize, this is my new computer with a new software, so I'm just playing with slide designs. So let us remember that we are here at this converging time where many prophecies say that we have the ability to step into a golden age, but it's up to us to create the causes and conditions for that. And I think this is why we want to come together at this time, because it seems like there's a lot of projection into the field about the new earth, but that holds many of the qualities of what old earth is about. And I think we have to deconstruct some of those afflictions and tendencies that often pervade some well-meaning folks and organizations, but have not been really met head on. And without going into conflict with it, if we can strive to somehow deconstruct that and step forth, it will help a stabilization of the ecosystems, because there will be people who want to go up front and be the leader all the time, but that's not true natural law. We're here always where we peak, we bloom, we germinate, we sleep. And a whole the whole thing is that biomimicry, understanding how nature works and taking some snapshots from that into our mix is a super easy and practical way of seeing what's really healthy out there. So we're in this very important time, and Khenpo Rinpoche, Kalachakra master of the Jonang tradition, who's really he's a guardian of Shambhala in many ways. He was told by astrologers that we have a window to enter into a golden age by around 2033. And when I wrote my book, I looked at astrology through three different systems and saw, yes, that's in our timeline. And starting around now, we're in a very strong time. And there are many portals and evolutions that we can go through if we choose to take the initiation. So right now, this year is like a game changer. It's a transformation year. And it feels like this first half of the year is very much a disruptor, and many people have felt an intensity. They are feeling like a lot of ancient, Tara mentioned shame earlier. We're meeting ancient residues of shame, metaphysical shame, societal shame, and that's actually at this time of speaking. Both Mercury and Venus are in an ashamed state in Pisces. And Mercury, it's funny that we can't really speak. Mercury's debilitated right now and it's ashamed. So all those blockages around communicating effectively in certain spaces to certain demographics, and yeah, just these blemishes that we've inherited, they're really prominent at the moment. And actually, in a few days, we're going to come into another Venus-Saturn conjunction. And this is very much for me like these catalyzing points of the new priestesshood. And I think that I wrote an article the other day about this. We have this kind of pseudo-spiritual concept of priestess and priesthood right now, which is very performative and sexualized. And that a lot that's very much about emoting and talking about feelings all the time. And a lot of these things that are very much trappings of the ego that can keep people very much in the I rather than in the we. And if we want to optimize our multidimensional capabilities, we have to be able to observe when we're blended with that. We all do have an I, but the problem is that the tendency is for people to place I on the throne. And that's something that's going to need to be really challenged if we really want to navigate into a higher timeline of full humility and service. So yeah, so I'm not going to go into all the current timelines, but if anybody's got my book, it's there's a whole chapter on it and more. And I just wanted to mention a little bit of this concept of dakini weaving. And the book that was written came through as dakini weaving, partially to shroud it at that time, because some people don't know what the dakini is, but also yeah, and it was very much about us understanding the feminine principle in things and that is rising. And this is all about this yin receptivity, the horizontal, the dreaming, all of these things that are there. But it's also about de-intellectualizing things. The Dakini disrupts this over intellectualization of things that we see often in patriarchal and academic paradigms, where the true essence, the absolute spirit of something is often diluted and it becomes competitive, shrouded in rhetoric, shrouded in subjective thinking that's framing itself as scientific or as empirical or whatever it may be. And the Dakini disrupts that because it's just an essence gateway. It's an interesting day to speak of that today astrologically because it's very much that energy in the Mayan calendar. It's like a feminine principle that's a gateway. And so, this reclamation of that energy that we all hold, no matter what gender we are or that we identify with, that we all have this Dakini energy and this fierce, compassionate, magical energy that is really a transmitter and receiver of consciousness beyond verbal states. Okay. And this is something that is very much what we have to reclaim to come into this new earth golden age frequency. And we have to honor it up there with the masculine part of us that we all hold as well. And so the Dakini in many ways resists definition, okay, because it is there to problematize this figuring out over analytical colonial part that sits within us. And we're all holding these residues of colonization, which have caused a tendency for this over empirical yang territorial behavior. And we need to disrupt that. And that's why the Dakini is a good archetype to speak of in that. And I think that many people, also the shame that many people are feeling right now, especially where the planets are placed, a lot of the residues that we're feeling are linked to metaphysical shame that is often ancestral, because many of us have come from lineages where religion was done to us, and you are seen as a minion. You do not you do not emanate divinity yourself in those ancient times. And we need to come to a point where we understand that our this human container plus the consciousness that we hold is multidirectional, and it is not just subordinate to an idea of religion that is formed around these colonial master discourses. And master doesn't mean it is master, it just is how it's portrayed, that have been part of the colonial paradigm. Okay. And so the concept of our roots, the concept of who we are, all of these have become embedded in certain ideas of what truth is that are all projected through these linear function text-based paradigms. And the Dakini is there to disrupt that, to remind us that we've always had the oral tradition. We've always been able to communicate with the natural realm. We are multidimensional beings, and we are also multi-directional beings. And actually, if we keep hindering our life force and keep just working as these vertically operated beings, we will not upgrade the way these times are necessitating. And a lot of people are really realizing at the moment that their galactic consciousness is really activating. And I know Pam Gregory was speaking of the current or the recent eclipses, saying the galactic consciousness is coming online. And this is something we're studying as well in our non-dual astrology training, and also some of the further gateways into the second half of this year, where this whole concept of knowing thyself, this today actually in the dream spell calendar is a great day to activate this concept of know thyself, because it's the dream spell around knowing. And if we want to create ecosystemic alignment with all our other beings on the planet, with each other, and as cosmic beings, we need to start to map ourselves. This is the first law of permaculture, is actually the mapping and observation phase. Okay. So if you were going to set up an eco center somewhere, ideally you spend a year mapping the seasons and mapping the terrain and seeing how nature works there. And of course, with the colonial mindset, we're too busy trying to conquer everything. Yeah. And trying to race ahead, rescue people, have this messianic approach. And that's what needs, we need to take a step back. And that's why many people find it very hard to function. And Mars is debilitated as well. So we have three planets debilitated right now, and then a big karmic mashup in Pisces. So spiritually, we're in a chrysalis of sorts, and we're slowed down from acting too fast. We will have these moments where we have clarity, and then it's extinguished. So there's a lot going on to slow us down to actually come into the first law of permaculture that everybody's been missing out, which is mapping and observing. But actually, before that, you need to dream before you do. So you can't even get to permaculture unless you've really done the dreaming first. But mapping and observing is still very much linked to the dreaming. So in my book, I looked at human permaculture and I posited some human ways that we could honor permaculture, but start to look at our new formations in to help to lead to a golden age. And what we're really not doing at the moment is utilizing our multidimensional energy effectively. And it seems like what's been required of us, if we want to align with natural time, is to use these months to map ourselves. And we've recently been talking a lot about resonance. We're coming out of this epoch of really rubbish karmic relationships, which have been necessary. All of these trials and tribulations of the ancestors and their afflictions, the shame, and these shame-driven patterns, okay? And we're being asked to really go into that. And a lot of people are having these flashbacks, these rememberings, and suddenly there's a clarity where it's like, I see where this comes from. So we're in a massive purification of all of that. But then what we have to do is stabilize who we are in that changed paradigm. Because right now, if we want a new earth, and everybody's still operating from the old shame constructs, from these old paradigms, and then they act from the ego, we're just going to create more negative karma, and everybody's just going to end up in karma rather than dharma relationships. And what we want to do is to come into this sense of finding the right people to have these in nature we call it guilds. And so a guild is maybe a set of creatures and plants and trees who have an affinity, especially where they are placed, to help that micro part of the ecosystem to function. Okay, so what we're really being asked to do, I feel right now, is to find the true guilds. But we have to know who we are first, and we have to come forth as the Dharma being. And this is why we're working through our habits, our patterns, our parts, our afflictions, so that we can start to emanate, to magnetize, and to find resonance. And what's going to happen is the new galactic year that begins on the 26th of July is a resonant year. It's resonant seed year. So it's the time to start to seed our new communities, but to not do it from this colonial imprint karma way. Okay. So that's just a little bit of a preview of some of the astro. And we already spoke a little bit about this. I'm just going to try and move. Sorry, I can't see anything. Okay, so I'm just not going to move the thing because I can't see my cursor. So we need to start to more effectively analyze the way we're programmed to think that everything's vertical and it's about power and success and competition, which is the yang paradigm. Okay. And what we're going to do in this ANEW project initiative is yes, sometimes, and to catalyze some things, I will give some teachings, short teachings, but they're not me. It's a synthesis from lineage holders, masters, wisdom keepers who hold natural law um, and dreaming paradigms, and we will. That will be brought to the table, okay? It's not like, hi, this is Padma on show. It's here's what has been what's got correlations across different tribal systems, what is Dharma, what is cosmic law, to help people to anchor in that. And then we're also within each module, we're going to have these horizontal peer-to-peer focus groups where we start to envisage how these things look. Okay. And then we have this synarchic, telepathic, multidimensional, these dreaming pods, these non conceptual aspirational, multidimensional fields, which will do great things. Okay, I can't tell you what they'll do because that's not the idea. But when we come together as these multidimensional beings, this will help to stabilize the field. Okay, so what we often don't have, everything is usually pretty much vertical or vertical and horizontal. But what we're really being asked to do is to bring the three together. And I started working with horizontally and telepathically organized communities since I was 15. Okay. So, and I think a lot of people don't know that a lot of my earlier life was spent studying networks around the world, and these were alternative networks. So it's always been with temporary autonomous zones with change makers. So I would have my night job would be kind of multidimensional, but my day job was being commissioned to write reports and going off piece to many, many different countries and being an active bridge between many, many countries and many networks. And I gave that up. I kind of pretty much finished in 2012 with that after a very prolific period. And now it's, I'm still talking to a lot of the change makers from those networks, and some of them may come in some of the panels that we do. Because for me, then I was mapping what works in distributed networks where everything's not vertically organized. And then I studied permaculture, I did eco-village training, and I'm a very keen multidimensional psychonaut and weaver. And then, of course, I spent considerable time working with the grandmothers and keepers of the dreaming codes in Australia. And that was definitely, yeah, a homecoming in many ways to some of these frequencies that we can abide in, where we're there and it's a transmission. We don't really know what's going on, but we're receiving something, and then some essence of wisdom comes through that once it's integrated. And so I can fully attest to how powerful these fields of awareness are. And I've also been empowered into the grandmothers. Um, um, Sharon McCurlin, I think is her name, her group that's mostly based in the States, but has pods all around the world. So yeah, so for me, it's always been about how we can weave the social and how we can overcome trauma and create greater inclusion and move beyond marginalization. Because I also see a lot of elite behavior, even in Dharma organizations, in a lot of eco societies, in a lot of Tantra movements. And my passion has been over the years to work with a lot of marginalized groups, prison inmates, refugees, Afro-Caribbean communities, gangsters, all sorts. Uh, just to, because this whole thing has got to be collective. And what I see is the lens that privilege creates, which is often very exclusive. And again, is just replaying the vertical paradigm. So yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I am multidimensional, but I'm also keenly invested in how we can actually create a 3D template that we bring down from the multidimensional, but we have to work with the true natural law first, rather than racing ahead, which was, I was very much passionate about how do we solve these problems that we would see in societies. And actually, in my younger years, I was using all that hormonal energy to rampage around the world learning. But now I really understand and embody a deeper sense of sitting still and working really exquisitely with natural time and natural cycles. So I feel that what we need to do right now is to create these authentic systems that are striving for impeccability and to come into these guilds, these pods, where we realize the importance of selfless endeavor, because so much out there in some of these situations like neo tantra or eco villages is ego driven. And I actually learned so much from things like the free party movement and the squat movements, because people just wanted change and they come together and they do the shitty jobs. And we would even from my late teens, I started seeing the telepathy that's at play when people drop into a shared goal and just come into it together. And I think that for a lot of people who are very disconnected at the moment, for me, it was my happy place. And because we are striving to work beyond this disconnection that we feel, this fragmentation that means that we don't even feel part of the natural order anymore. And the more and more we can both come into these multidimensional fields together, but also to come into being pods of good practice who are working through this and bridging it into an inclusive system that is not just about looking very spiritual or looking very opulent, then I feel that we can really properly get a golden age going. So in terms of the ANEW program as it stands right now, so this is what I'll bring to the table for now, is that actually this ended up aligning very much with what we might look at in the Indian chakra system. Okay, so we're almost dealing from the root up. And so the first thing we're going to look at, each module is going to look at myths that are around in these kind of new earth ideals. So the first one is looking at this colonial construct in that yang is everything, okay? And that everything has got to be vertical and therefore the root is the bottom. And to disrupt that, to come into honoring the dreaming, understanding how to work to reclaim our access to the dream time. And then the next one is about this duality that we see in colonial programming that's sitting in so many things that creates this self and other and otherizing and a lot of these things that end up in this kind of cultural imperialism, elitism, and marginalization that gets perpetuated. And I don't see many people talking about decolonization out there. And so what we have at the moment is a lot of new age colonial patterning, okay? And a lot of these pseudo spiritual movements, this kind of priestess stuff, is very much about looking very pretty and rich, okay? And we have to start to really look at what we can do to decolonize, to become fully inclusive and less unconsciously driven by duality. Then we're going to look at this individualism that's rampant. It's okay to be individuated and know what we bring to the table, but this strong ego identification with the new earth that's all about personalities and to try to move beyond that and to challenge that. Then we come into kind of the heart area, and it's looking at the disconnect that people feel that perpetuates this individuation that actually keeps us in our lower energetic programming, that keeps us in the vertical paradigm. And only when we've overcome those lower ones can we come into understanding that we are connected and to look at true connectivity and the multidirectionality of connectivity. Then we're going to go into the throat area and deconstruct a lot of things that we see where people are fixated, especially in eco communities, with meetings about meetings and this everybody having to do compassionate communication all the time, which is great. But then everybody's just like, when you did this, I felt this. And it's just then it languishes in feelings and it can become a little bit of a masturbatory sort of thing because people are just allowing themselves to perform their feelings all the time rather than true reflexivity and ability to use pristine speech at the right moments and to actually be able to take ourselves away to meditate and then to know when to communicate. So if we want to manage our energy effectively, we have to become better at that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have compassionate communication. It's just like that a lot of retreats, a lot of projects at the moment, everything's about relating. And yes, relating is going to be important in new communities, but it's just about relating because so much is actually pivoted around sexualized encounters. Okay. So it's all about it has to be about intimacy, it has to be about relating. And that's all actually sacral chakra stuff that hasn't been overcome. And the opposite is if you go to Dharma organization and nobody's going to talk to you about your feelings at all. Okay. So we have to find a middle ground. is where we can hold space for each other going through things, but we don't languish in that. Then we go up to the third eye and this whole concept of Gregorian time, the false time matrix, and how that has embedded the slave code within us, which means that we're not optimized multidimensional beings. And we'll be applying some high teachings about that. And then how we can actually come into being these sovereign free will pioneers. And by doing so, help to augment the whole vibration. And then finally, the crown will be deconstructing some of these false spiritual paradigms that are actually very much about self-based needs or desires. And to really understand these higher workings of spiritual materialism beyond an idea of a fixed sense of self, to how we need to really come into this higher essence of striving for shift for all beings and just really operating as a spiritual emanation. Okay. So each module is, as I said earlier, we have a little baby satsang and then a co-inquiry and then a dreaming pod. And these will be in different orders depending. Sometimes we'll have it all in one day, and sometimes there's a bit of reflection time in between to really let things percolate. And also around the operation and delivery of this, I'm inviting and already have yeses from some amazing metaphysical wisdom keepers, and we have space for more. We also invite collaborators. We invite other people to bring their wisdom into the mix because this is not about any personality. This is about us bringing this amazing abundance of knowledge we have to the table and to help to map. It helps the mapping process if we're like, oh, this person does this and they do that. So it's really a call to action. I'm just activating it because I have activation codes in me. That's all. And so we will have more dreaming pod sessions. We will probably have some quantum sessions. Later in the year, we'll be doing level 2 of the Dakini weaving training, which is almost like a bridge space holder. So it's been multidimensionally trauma informed, understanding human permaculture in action. It's to step forward with synthesis of some of this into a practical role. And we also aligned with some of the Dakini weaving training. We've already been requested to give like a decolonization training, probably some human permaculture training. So there are also one-day trainings by myself and with others. And we have Tara and I are going to be doing some sessions in Scotland and Ireland. So there are lots of sort of co-hosted trainings coming up. And yeah, we're open to people coming to weave with us. And yeah, finally, Dharma stars are available to help people in their know thyself phase to understand their astrology, where their karma is holding them into patterns that would keep them karma informed rather than tapped into their highest essence. And yeah, that's just what I'm laying on the table. So I think that's all. Yeah. So let me stop sharing and I'd love to hear from you all. How's that sounding? Is there anything you would like to speak to or offer? Elena?
Thank you, Padma, and lovely to meet you, Tara. And I think Marianne, we met once before online, and Jenny, of course. And yeah, what came for me through this sort of horizontal versus vertical portal, and it's kind of in continuation with what we were weaving during the dream spell call. And in relation to dream spell, the wave spells, and it's been 13 tones. Is this horizontal is this liminal space, right? Where the dreaming occurs, and how I sort of experiencing it in myself and collective. The beginning of it is really zero pointing all the energies that are there, right? All the dualistic, distorted energies need to be zero pointed. I'm sort of was given the lucid dreaming, an astral realm is the realm where our intentions, whether they're coming from the soul alignment or distorted limiting beliefs, they manifest immediately. And so that liminal space is reclaiming the sovereignty of the soul rather than the sovereignty of the will to command. And so that isn't process on its own. That needs to occur first. That sort of zero pointing, the return of the soul sovereignty. And then that aspect of co-creating, which is the feminine co-creation, and the way it linked for me with the dream spell sync order is there's 260 please remind me what they're called, you know,
I
this
think you call
combination
signatures.
signatures, thank you, of combinations of 13 tones and 20 archetypes. It's like within the dream spell system, they're all equally valid. They all hold the keys for various frequencies that to really create the harmony need to weave together into one loom, and following the natural order, the sync order of which one is the most skillful, masterful to bring into the weaving in any particular day. And then the sort of moving from 1 to 6, where it's in the subliminal realm, to 7, where it really has the highest potential to then start manifesting into the material. And that's really the coming of the lovers, isn't it? And actually, I don't know, my guides are talking through major arcana through tarot cards with me today. So they sort of brought the lovers, you know, the masculine and the feminine moving to the masculine together, from the how to what, the sort of the segment and ta, you know, the fire of creation, transmutation first, and then creation, and then bringing it into form, and then moving from 8 to 13 as a kind of manifestation within those balanced energies. And of course, that's where distortions can occur, but that's where the sort of dance of the masculine manifestation with feminine wisdom needs to continue rather than they kind of working separately. So that's what landed for me, that sort of, it's not just about horizontal, it's finding that dance between starting from the horizontal, then finding this kind of intersection point, and then moving into vertical, but retaining the overall harmony.
Yeah, it's what's missing mostly is that people will fixate on one thing. And what we're being asked to do in this time is to really bring all three together.
Yes.
When I used to do these works with different social projects, one of the projects that I created in Manchester was a hub, and we were working very much with meeting top down and bottom up. And it became part of a kind of pilot group within an EU project, and people loved it because all these small and medium enterprises were like, wow, look at this multidirectionality. And of course, we weren't even being allowed to do this synarchic telepathic in the same way. So I think that we have to, I just want to say something about the horizontal and the vertical because there are different ways we can read it. So just in terms of how we will do it on the ANEW project. So let's call me sharing the synthesis, that's vertical because it's coming from the lineages. So this is coming from here. And then the horizontal is like the peer-to-peer, okay, the peer-to-peer discussion. And then the multi-directional is the telepathic synarchic. Okay, so that we are creating both a tangible physical manifestation of both vertical and horizontal by having these pods of co-creational discussion. And then we also have the telepathic synarchic, because if you have both the top down, call it bottom up, but also call it peer to peer. This is what's missing in so many societies. And this is why you see, if I just keep seeing it, people are not programmed to talk to their neighbor. And when we do things like group scenarios, people don't pass messages on because everybody's kind of been like, it just stops at me. They don't think, well, how can I help that person? How can I empathize or find resonance with them to share? And so we used to do a lot of peer to peer projects. So that was all very physical and tangible. So the vertical in this project, the vertical and the horizontal is also an allusion to the dreaming that we have to do, but the synarchic is also this multidirectional. That's an interface with the galactic, with the Earth realm, with each other, and all of those things. So it's just I just wanted to clarify that it's not completely aligned. It's not completely a follow up to what you said, but it just wanted to come through. Yeah. Yeah. So anybody else got anything they want to say? Well, I'm just going to tell you a little bit right now about the program because it wants to start soon. Oh, this is linked to what Elena was saying. So, yeah, in terms of people zero pointing sufficiently, we were told to get going. Okay, we already started doing the dreaming pods earlier this year. Now we're kind of going a bit more public. But in terms of the karmic conditions of where most people are at, and I don't mean this in any sort of superiority way, it's just what we're all working through, is that a lot of people won't get it yet for the early part of the dreaming codes. Yeah. And that's why we have it that people can just come to one module because it calls them, or come and do the whole program. And in some ways, it's a little bit premature that we're starting now, but the guides were like, no, you got to start now. And it's like they cleared the decks for this to begin as it begins, and I can see what's coming in later. So it will be that people who come to the earlier phase of the dreaming will be people who've found it to this transmission, and there won't be that many because they're coming soon. And then actually we have more people already interested in the decolonization session through different networks. And so it's seen that actually a lot of people are going to come on board with some of the concepts as we move in, but that some of the activism as we set the scene is going to be for people who are already tapping into these concepts of going beyond these false floors of what truth might be, and tapping into these higher essences of creation stories and non-conceptual wisdom. So it's very much aligned with what you were saying, that a lot of people aren't ready to interface in this way. Absolutely. But we're just here to start to give the teachings, and some of them will be actually more practical later on for people because they will be talking maybe to the problem solving we need for our communities. So yeah, so I think that's all. I mean, we're starting soon. Oh yes, anybody who's here, thank you, Marianne. So this just went up today, and yeah, it's as I say, it's a platform for people to weave with and to bring things to the table with. And anybody who's managing to access this transmission now, you can get in touch with us, and we're actually there's the session that we have on the 27th, which is the first myth, and looking at this over yang programming and always this attachment to doing all the time. That's next week on the 27th, but before that we actually have the first dreaming session, but it's kind of invite only. So if you've managed to hear this transmission and it's speaking to you, we have a global dreaming session with wisdom keepers from around the world, and a lot of that's actually going to be taking place from the Middle East. And so we're going to be going into a very deep circular sharing where the elders will be sharing and weaving first. And then we're also going to go into our own little pods to share and then to reconvene. And there are already many, many people already signed up to this, linked to the wisdom keepers around the world. So we have an inauguration, and that's free to attend. That inauguration is on the 24th. It's around 5:30 p.m. UK time it begins, and it'll be 90 minutes to 2 hours long. So yeah, so even in terms of being aligned with natural law of how we do things, we are working with the essence of the elders, the essence of the dreaming, the essence of coming together in circle to anchor these energetics properly And then we start to go into the thematics from the 27th. Okay. So thank you for sharing that, Marianne. And yep, I don't know if anybody wants to say anything before we go.
Thank you very much and happy Easter. I've got to run.
Yay. And thank you all for coming and sharing in the group field and sharing your insights. And yeah, if you think there's something you would like to bring into the mix, we can't say that, oh, so I keep reading, when you go on YouTube and there's a tarot reading, you decide to watch it. So they're all saying things like, yeah, this is going to be a solid project and it's going to be, just steady the right way. So we're already mapping and observing, and it's definitely not clear yet. But if you do feel there's something you want to bring into the mix, my mapping head is open, and I've already spoken to some people. So we're starting to curate some other activities linked to this. And we're keen to hear. And we really look forward to finding new resonant people to share space with and for them to bring their gifts through. So it feels really exciting and really timely. So, call to action. Yay. Hope to see you soon. Ciao, ciao. Bye.